Welcome everybody. So welcome to this fourth Interreg training workshop. This is an EU project dedicated to startups and SMEs, you know, and so toward entrepreneurship and growth. I'll be your host this morning. I'm Stéphane Hullery. I'm an economist by training. I'm a professor at Neoma Business School, and actually I'm a specialist of innovation and biotech and bioeconomy. I hold the chair in bioeconomy at Neoma Business School, and I'm delighted to welcome you today, and also to introduce this hot topic about how to optimize policy tools, how to manage incubators. And so to do that, usually what I do is econometrics, ugly statistics to evaluate policy tools. But so I'm so happy also that there's a bottom-up initiative to really examine what are the indicators, what are the good practices, and do benchmarks all around Europe. So let me introduce the speakers this morning. We have 4 different speakers, and the first one is Madame President Catherine Vautrin, which is at the head of the Reims Métropole. She was also the Vice President of the French Assembly, and she was a Deputy Minister of Social Cohesion and Parity. So social cohesion means growth, employment, and also entrepreneurship. So I welcome her to give a speech to you. I leave the floor.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, and dear partners of Speed Up. I'm glad to welcome you this morning in Reims for this very important seminar in this project. As you have heard, I'm the president of the Reims urban community. This means that the administration I'm president of is in charge of the economic aspects for Reims and its ecosystem. It's not only Reims downtown, but for the 142 small cities, I may say sometimes villages around Reims. And what is at stake is a leading common project and common vision, guided by the ambition of this huge territory and community in the respect of differences of each city. From what I know, it seems that Speed Up stands for the same foundation, a unique ambition enriched with the differences of each one of us, I must say. We are really very proud that Reims and Grand Reims are part of Speed Up. I've heard only very positive feedbacks of the work you do all together, creating such a winning team. Warsaw, Firenze, Toscana, Sevilla, Tallinn, Antwerp, Brandenburg, Lisbon, and of course at least Reims. Being part of this team, it's in itself making us boast about it. But we do share way more. We share the will to discover each other, take the best of each, of one of us, in order to build the most adapted ecosystem for the blooming initiatives and projects all around Europe. Let me assert that every project has its place in the main city of Champagne region. First and foremost, we are close to Paris, 45 minutes by train and 30 minutes to make to Roissy-Charles de Gaulle Airport, which means literally to make it to the whole world. And even if we are very close to the French capital city, we are really far from its prices. Starting a business in Reims is a guarantee to be connected to the main metropoles of Europe with a fair cost. What's more, even so money remains a key regarding many projects is not sufficient on itself. Being part of a vibrant local ecosystem in a city of arts, culture, sports, and nature can trigger many opportunities. You are going to discover during this seminar the main actors of our ecosystem, incubators, accelerators, innovation agencies and stakeholders. And I won't be too much asserting that the bubble of champagne can favor bubble of creativity and innovation. But I know you are also going to have the opportunity to discover a bit our town, Reims, by the end of the day, Champagne, of course, and Notre Dame Cathedral. So, well, welcome to Reims. I wish you a very pleasant day and a productive work to make your seminar a success in the royal city of Champagne. Have a very, very good seminar.
Thank you, Madam President. So let me introduce now our next speaker, Lucia De Servio. She's at the head of the Department of Economic Development and Tourism in Florence. So I saw she's an economist by training for the University of Florence, and she also graduated from Grenoble University. So she's really welcome in France. As usual, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Welcome to the 4th International Training Workshop here in Reims concerning the monitoring system within the incubators. In particular, the key word of this meeting is KPI, key to performance indicators, about the indicators, activity and performance and the hosted company. It's a pleasure to be hosted here in Reims by our French partner and see that partner is so proactive, and there are many people there. I want to thank Madame Catherine Vautrin, the President of Grand Reims Métropole, and the new staff member of Speed Up Partnership, Madame Lucie Junet, which in few months have organized such a big event. We are at the last meeting of this phase of investigation of good practices, and as you know, this is the last topic and very challenging. Moreover, as you know, Interreg Europe is working hard also to develop the policy learning platform open to all policymakers in Europe in order to help policymakers find solutions and improve their public policies by engaging these experts and peers. So, my wish is that the Speed Up contributors could be part of this learning process at European level, and Speed Up stakeholders and partners could benefit from the platform services and contribute to the activities in the following years. We met, I was not there, I'm sorry, in Warsaw in last June, and we could verify how important it is to monitor the performances of enterprise in general, and inside the incubator in particular. And we understood how different can be the mission between public and private incubators. So, this meeting will try to involve such a huge audience of stakeholders in a proactive discussion on which are the quantitative and qualitative approach in private business incubators and which are qualitative approach in public business incubators. And later, we will investigate another big issue, how to measure performance management. In particular, we will try to answer to the question referred to each phase of enterprise life: pre-incubation, incubation, and acceleration. So, for each of these stages, we will demand what are the most relevant qualitative key performance indicators. But before this breakout session, we will really ask you to share your policies, DAB, and possible solution among each other. We have the pleasure to introduce the topics with the contribution of some partners. So I leave the floor to Pauline Bush, Chief of Operational Office, who will present SEMIA approach to the evaluation of startup support program performance monitoring system of a public-funded business incubator. Thank you.
I wait for my presentation. It should come.
So let me a little bit introduce Apolline. So Apolline Butch is Chief Operational Officer at SEMIA. SEMIA is, I guess you know her if you participate in this project for years. So, so she's new to me, and at least. So SEMIA is an incubator in Alsace, okay, settled in Strasbourg and also in higher Alsace, let's say, okay, in Colmar. And so she's nearby my beloved University of Pasteur because I am also associated with this lab. And she's an engineer by training, and so she's active and proactive in this, and she will present, of course, as soon as possible, her presentation about incubators and the experience in Alsace. Okay, so of course, just to remind that indicators are important for you at the incubator level, but I just filed a H2020 last week about KPI for GG Agri. So they have exactly the same problem to monitor their policy, R&D policy and innovation policy at the EU level. So I don't know if it helps you, but I guess everybody has the same problem. Okay, I'll leave you the floor.
So hello everybody. I don't think we've met yet because I joined very recently the project. So I work from Strasbourg and we'll be working with Reims, with Innovact. So that's why I'm here today. I will firstly give you a short overview of our activity in SEMIA and then introduce a few KPI we are following to manage our public incubator business activity. So SEMIA was launched in 2000, urged by the French Ministry of Research. So the first aim of the incubator was to do technology transfer to new company, and we started to support other projects, not only coming from public research at the beginning of 2008. And now we're following different projects coming from everywhere, managed by researchers, by students, and by people from private sector. And in every field, technology, innovation, but also service innovation. From the beginning, we've been supporting 2,031 projects. That led to 194 company creations. And what we do So we support entrepreneurs in their path to company creation, and that is based on a proven methodology. So we developed incubation by SEMIA, and we're now widening our activity at the scale of the region Grand Est. So a few words about our methodology. Ouais, désolé. Tu peux remonter, ouais, désolé. So we have different stages in our incubation program with several selection phases. So we have first a collective training program that is aimed to support entrepreneurs in building their strategy. And then we have a committee that approves the following of the support, and then it's based on an individual coaching, supporting operationally the entrepreneurs in their path to startup growth. So yeah, then you have the map. You have the map with the different locations. So we've been for years in Alsace, and then we've been developing at Charleville-Mézières, and now we're working with Metz and Reims. C'est bon. So maybe a few words about our governance, if it's interesting for you. So we've been founding, SEMIA is an association. It has been founded in 2004 by two universities, one engineering school and two research organisms, and the region Alsace and now Grand Est. We have other members. You might know maybe BPI France, the Public Bank of Investment, and we also work with the state. And last year we decided to open our governance to private actors. So a startup joined the governance, and also a bank and SME, Socomec, which is based in Strasbourg. C'est bon. So our business model, so we are a public incubator, so we are mainly funded by public funders. So that's the European Commission, the state, so Ministry of Research, and also the local authorities, so the cities of Strasbourg, Charleville-Mézières, and then. We opened our economic model a few years ago, so we're now eligible to patronage, and we also have private donators, so mainly banks today, but we're trying to find new donators, and that's in our strategy. So our value proposition, so today we have three main activities focused on supporting entrepreneurs in their path to startup growth. So the first one is coaching and training programs based on our methodology, incubation by SEMIA. Then it's working on the community. Because of our experience, we have a large community of startuppers, and we're trying to work on that with an alumni program, and we're developing SEMIA, the club, would say, to help the new entrepreneurs with the old ones who have experience. And the third activity is offices, so we also provide offices to startuppers to help them to have a good framework to work. A few words about the startups we are supporting. So I did some statistics about on the projects from the beginning. So on the 200 projects, we have about 1/3 based on a biotech or medtech innovation. Then we have half of it in digital sector, and then a bit of social innovation and clean tech. Maybe more interesting what we have now in our portfolio. So that's almost the same. So we have 1/3 biotech, medtech. So in Strasbourg, you have a large potential in this field. Half digital new services. Tu peux passer à l'autre, ouais. And 5% of social innovations. So now we have about 70 projects in our portfolio. In 2017, we just welcomed 23 new projects. I give you a few words here. So that's about our activity. Now I will go to the main subjects why we're gathered here today, to introduce you a few KPIs we're working on. I hope it's interesting for you to do that. So how we monitor performance in our activity. So first, our main stake is to measure our economic impact of our activity and of our startups. So the three indicators we're working on to measure startup activity is turnover. So how startup manage to grow and generate turnover. We don't communicate for each startup. We communicate about the global turnover generated by the startups we're following. This is because of confidentiality. We follow the FTE also, based on the global portfolio we have, and we follow fundraising. So that's the three main points. It depends on the activity sector. For example, for biotech and medtech, maybe fundraising is more interesting than turnover because for the first years they won't generate any turnover. For digital sector, it's more important to have the turnover. It's not more important, but it's interesting also to have the turnover activity. Juste avant encore. So what we follow, so that's for startups. For incubator activity, we have different stages. So we support projects. Then we measure how those projects lead to company creation. Because when we introduce the new projects, they don't have any structure yet. So then we measure how many structures are created. And then we measure years after how many of those company creation are still alive. And what we follow, so our performance main KPI is the survival rate at 5 years. So we decided to take it at 5 years because we estimate that in France at 3 years it's not enough because of all the subsidies you can get. You can survive 3 years without any problem if you're good enough. So we think that to measure if a business is viable, it's better to have it at 5 years. If you're interested in how we calculate it, we can elaborate on that later. So then, this slide is a bit compact, but I wanted to give you an exhaustive view of what we're calculating to manage our performance. So first, on our portfolio, we calculate the number of detections, so how many solicitations we have, and that's to measure our visibility. Then we measure how many projects we support in our collective training programs, and also on our individual support. And sorry, I have to. And then, so we measure that each year the new projects we have, but also the stock at a given time. So, for example, in 2017 we had 23 new projects, but in stock we have about 50 and now 70. And then, based on those figures, we can do a distribution depending on different indicators and according to the aims our funders give us. So, for example, the state of Strasbourg wants to know how many startups are created in Strasbourg. European Commissions want to know, I don't know if you know about the Smart Specialization Strategy, S3. So the European Commissions want to know by sector, how many startups are created by sector. the French Ministry of Research wants to know how many startups are linked to public research. So we have different filters to do distribution among our portfolio. And what's interesting as well is the origin of the project manager. Is he someone coming from the private sector? Is he a researcher, a student? So that's something we do as well. And then per project, we measure the time spent by the team for each project. And we measure the subsidies they get from us, because we have a few money to spend on projects, but also from all the institutions. So that's also a performance rate, how many money we're able to search with the projects. And then, of course, we follow the company creation and the capital they have in their structure. Okay, c'est bon. And then to end, just to give you an overview for SEMIA, so yeah, 150 detections we did for 23 projects in incubation. So we calculate the selection rate, and then we do statistics on our portfolio, for example, link with public research. So to measure our link with public research, we have two different categories. The first one is technology transfer. So we have startups with technology transfer licenses, but we also have startups working with public labs for contracting, for example, PhD work. And that's it. I don't know if I'm good with the time. If you have any questions, I don't know, now or later. Je sais pas. Yeah.
I can see it exactly because quite small. Most of them are from the private sector of the project managers or students?
Yeah, the most is about private sector. Yeah, yeah. Just wait for the.
Startups from biotech and medical tech that you mentioned as those that do not have turnover immediately after incorporation. How strong a criteria of patentability is considered as a KPI? Like, do you consider patents as a very strict, very rigid KPI for your
For us, patentability is an eligibility criteria. So at first, we are sure that the patents are here, are strong, the technology transfer license is set, because if there's no IP, there's no project. So that's one of our eligibility criteria. So we measure that at the beginning.
Sorry for
No.
but it never happened to you that you had like a very legit, strong team from academia that was just before, like 2 weeks before applying for a patent, and you agreed anyway?
Yeah, of course. We start to support them, of course, because sometimes we meet team before it's negotiated. And so we can make them join the global training program. And then before presenting them to the committee, we present the IP strategy, and we make conditions to make the project continue. So that's why.
I've got another question. Thank you for your presentation. I would like to know a few words about patronage, because you spoke about it, and that's a very original way to finance a startup incubator. Maybe you could tell us some words about it. Thanks.
So yeah, today we are the first and the only public incubator eligible to patronage in France. There's an accelerator in Paris called Wilco. They have the same business model. So we asked for a specific regime a few years ago to be eligible to patronage. That means that private actors giving us money can have a tax ratio and for 66%. So that's donation. And that's very interesting because there are many actors now wanting to support innovation and startups. And so we're trying to find new donators each year. So we have a big partner, it's the Caisse d'Épargne, giving us a large budget each year. We've got specific action with the Société Générale supporting us in promoting entrepreneurship for students. So we have a specific path for students. And we also have another bank, Banque Populaire, supporting us for our global training program.
Thank you.
And no? Okay, thank you. Finally, I have a question about the reactivity. I saw downtown Boston in biotech, they rent a bench and you can enter into the building within a week, a single week. So how reactive are you at SEMIA?
We have 3 collective training programs per year and 4 committees. The fact is that we can begin the support before the committees depending on the needs of the project. If it's urgent to help them, we begin to help them, and then we formalize that by the committee a few months later. So we try to be reactive, but we effectively have a process with committee, and maybe sometimes you have to wait a few months to be introduced to the committee.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Apolline. So now we carry on with other experiences, and so I'm delighted to welcome Carol Lambert. I don't know if I do pronounce it well. So he's working at the Ministry of Economic Affairs in Estonia, so in Tallinn, I guess, and at the head or working at the Economic Development Analysis, and so presenting about the key indicators, really core to the optimization of incubators. So I leave the floor. Carol, please. Thanks.
So, thank you for having me here. As said, my name is Karel Lember and I'm working in the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications in Estonia. I have worked here for 10 years now, and I can say that all this time I have been searching for perfect key performance indicators. And at the end of the presentation, probably I will tell you how many of them I have found during this period. I'm working in the Department of Economic Development, so monitoring and evaluating economic processes are essential in our job. And the indicators are part of it. When I came to the Ministry of Economic Affairs, my first job was to develop a good indicator system, because then we had 117 different KPIs and there were no system and no linkage to strategy. But let's speak a little bit about methodology. In general, there are 2 types of KPIs. One are the outcome KPIs and the driver KPIs. In my opinion, the organization should have both, but it depends on the project and depends on the organization. What are the main goals? How many should be the long-term indicators and how many should be short-term indicators. Having more long-term indicators, the problem is that as the data is lagging, you can't get enough information about processes. So, but on the other hand, it's important to have a bigger picture about your impact. But short-term indicators are also important for short-term and even in long-term, because you can get information right away when something happens. In startup world, I would say that the short-term indicators are even more important. I have here a couple of keywords about what we think are very important with KPIs. First, most important thing is they should be well defined and quantified, because regarding to our first indicator system, where there were more than 100 indicators, about half of them didn't have definitions. And the guy who left the job wasn't able to give us more information. So it didn't help much. If the indicators are not well defined, they're not good enough. So, but getting a good definition is also quite hard. Like about a week ago, we had a meeting with Estonian Foreign Investment Center, and their most important KPI is foreign investments brought to country, and their salaries are related to this. So the question was when we should measure it. Is investment done when a company says it will invest, let's say, 10 million euros to Estonia? Or should we set the mark there where the factory starts producing something? Or if there is a multi-stage investment, when should be the target there? So it takes time to have agreement on definitions, and also all definitions and also the goals. The other thing is important that the KPI should be linked to strategy, because you have to have power to impact them or have influence to the KPIs. If you can't do it, then there's no point to choose this kind of KPIs. And also the KPIs should be related to each other. If sometimes happens that they can be contrary, you can one KPI is like having a much bigger goal, but on the other hand, the other one, which is closely related to the first one, is having some much lower goal. So there is a conflict between them, and this should be avoided. It's important to measure and report only what matters. The number of KPIs should be as small as possible, because you just can't handle the amount of information. The most important is to measure exactly what you want to measure, and not just keep it simple is our aim. Also, it's important to communicate KPIs to the organization. Everyone in the organization should know why they are working and which direction they should go. If the KPIs are not communicated well enough, then they're also not helping organization to develop. And as I said, all KPIs targets must be linked or should be linked. at least we are trying to do this. So if we are choosing a new KPI, then we are closely watching that how it's related to other KPIs in other strategies or development plans. And there should be a very good link between them. So, actually, this is the place where I can say how many KPIs I have found. The right ones, probably none, because there are always the problems with them. Just you can choose as much as you want, but there is no perfect KPI. Maybe there is, but in my 10 years experience, we haven't found one yet. The measuring KPIs. One important thing is reliable information. If the information should come from somewhere, the source should be reliable. It doesn't matter if it's the statistical office or company reports. The most important is that you trust the source of information, because sometimes it happens maybe with small companies that information is not having as good quality as it should be. And maybe sometimes they are making numbers a little bit more beautiful if they should be. So keeping eye on the information is very important. Also the target. The goals have to be achievable. There is no point to have KPIs with goals which are not doable. Of course, it's good to have a good vision and good sight and think big of everything. But if you can see you can't achieve the goal, then I think this KPI is not manageable. Monitoring plan. Also one very important thing in our case, because we can choose the KPIs, but if no one is monitoring them, then the system falls apart. So monitoring plan is also important to have funds for monitoring, because sometimes the KPIs have data sources which contain some kind of service, or there have to be done some additional expenses to get information. Then if you are having a good monitoring plan, then you can plan the funds for your monitoring system. And also the management knows when the results are coming, and you can make a good time series. And again, the agreed definitions. Everyone should have same opinion about definition, because it's very easy to get confused. We have had many cases where, let's say, Minister of Finance is having totally different definition than us, and it's a lot of trouble to explain one and the things to another. The definitions are, in my opinion, even key aspect. And also the good definitions ensures that you can get good enough time series to follow. Okay. Again, about targets. I'm going to repeat myself, but the targets are one part of the monitoring system. And choosing the right targets is key with KPIs, because you can have a KPI, but if you don't choose a good enough target, you don't know how you are performing. And there is also the point that there should be a causality between your action and the KPI's performance. So Yeah, if you put the wrong target on the KPI, then it's no use to organization. And also the question, if target is not met. In our case, sometimes we have, let's say, we had flexible approach to this. So we have changed the targets. But on the other hand, in the organization, there should be some kind of mechanism which ensures that the KPIs have impact to something. So if the KPI is not met, I don't know, there could be any kind of sanctions, decreasing of funds or having a lower salary for some people, or there are a lot of different possibilities, but the KPIs should have some kind of impact in our case. Also, the question is what happens when the economic situation changes during the project period. It has happened many times, because if you remember 2009, all our KPIs just were blown up, because we have calculated that the economy will grow about 3-4% per year, but then it slumped about 15% in Estonia in 1 year. So all national KPIs were just useless. And this is just life. We can't avoid this kind of situations. This is also the aspect where arises the question if the KPI should be measured in real-time prices or nominal prices, and this little bit helps to smooth these kind of problems, but it doesn't solve the problem. And also, I would like to point out that post-project evaluations are even more important than KPIs sometimes, because KPIs can have multiple impacts from everywhere else. But if you are having a good post-project evaluation, then you can see which actions had the best impact to your KPIs, and which actions were needed and which actions were most profitable. Just watching time series of KPIs sometimes doesn't tell the whole story. To get most of the information, it's sometimes good to have this post-project evaluation. And we are usually trying to do it with all our entrepreneurship measures. So in our case, we are doing even multi-stage evaluations which contain surveys, econometric analyses, quantitative overviews. So to get out the best information and just to prepare new measures better. Okay, and there are some examples from Estonian case. I know my subject was methodology, but I couldn't resist to give some examples with what we are measuring. So, okay, this looks a little bit strange, but in the strategy level, we have like 3 most important KPIs in Estonia. These are R&D investments, productivity, and exports growth. These are for everyone. A little bit lower, let's say, our ministry's level strategy. We are watching this next row, number of enterprises who have like 20+ employees, and revenue from new products and services, which are also important for us. Let's say the higher 2 levels are the long-term indicators, which are having lagging information, and we can't get like real-time information about them. But these are important to watch the long-term changes in economy. But on the lower level, these are the like output indicators for programs. This one I chose what we are looking for, which we are monitoring in startup field. For us is important, okay, of course, number of companies which are everyone using, but let's say very important for us is taxes, because we have to measure somehow the quality of jobs which new startups are creating. And the one thing is the employment costs and taxes which they are paying. If the salary is higher, then probably the job has more quality, because you can't get a good specialist with low salaries. Of course, there are different option programs and different possibilities to pay to your workers, but the taxes are, in our case, I think most simple way to do it, and also it's real time. We can measure in quarter basis all companies' taxes for all people, and we have all the time good overview what is happening. And also funding is also important, with one of the important indicator for us. Then we can know how much money is coming. But it's every year is more hard to measure it, because the companies are raising money outside of Estonia, and also they are having departments and sections outside of Estonia. And so the relation with the links to our strategies and programs are not so strong anymore. But these are the main things what we are monitoring. But we are not looking for startups, actually. Is a couple of examples. Value added, we don't look. In general, the value added is, it's like productivity in most higher level. It's very important for us. The productivity is key for everything in Estonian strategic level. But in startups, it's no point to watch value added, because the employment costs gives us much more information. And also patents, there was before the question about patents, but this is also not very important for us, because I don't know, is it case for Estonian companies, but a lot of them doesn't use patents anymore. It's important to get to the market as fast as they can, and just to be the first on the market. And it's much more important to them, because having a patent everywhere in the world, it's very, very, very expensive. It takes time, and it doesn't give so big advantage anymore to the company. But of course, it shows some kind of R&D in the company and relation to the R&D. And that's all from me. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, I would like to answer.
Questions? Thank you. So, any question?
It's just a KPI question. You say 125,000 revenue and 20 employees. Is this, how does, that doesn't correlate in a way for me. Is the revenue on an annual basis, on a monthly basis?
No, they are not related to each other. These are just therefore different sections of the strategy, because the number of companies which are having 20 plus employees is for us to measure, let's say, the matureness of economy, or because we have this. We think that the company who has 20 plus employees is much more capable to doing R&D expenses. Yeah. It's good, it's big enough. But the companies which are having 125,000 euros revenue, this is like more the number of new companies which are coming to the...
They're sort of at a different stage as well, most probably. Okay, yeah, good, thank you.
Any other questions?
I was just wonder, when you say KPIs, to evaluate KPI performance, do you set a minimum standard, a minimum level to be achieved? And what you do if somebody or any organization, any company doesn't achieve this minimum requirement? Who is wrong? The person who set the strategy of the KPI, or the organization is being targeted by this, or the individuals who are being targeted by KPI? So what is the reaction if somebody doesn't achieve that minimum?
It depends who doesn't achieve the minimum. Of course, if it's national level KPIs are not achieved the minimum levels, like this productivity and R&D and expenses, let's be honest, nothing happens. We just say that let's say the economic conditions were not good enough for this. But on lower level, if like let's say Startup Estonia as a institution doesn't achieve its minimum targets, then next programming period there would be sanctions, and the funding will be different. And if the lower level KPIs are not met, like this foreign investment center KPIs, then there is a direct link with salaries with employees. They just don't get their Christmas bonus if they don't meet the KPI minimum level.
Any other question? I have two questions. So the way you presented it was, on one side, you need what you mentioned as a good time series, which I understand as an econometrician, so with really well-settled indicators to do really nice analysis. And also you mentioned that all the indicators were took time to be achieved, negotiated with stakeholders, and has to be adapted to targets. So how do you manage the evolution and the analysis, this tension between, on one side, the time series analysis, and on the other side, the evolving targets and evolving indicators? Or it's just a matter of, okay, we lower down the threshold and I don't know. So can you tell us something on this evolution, and how do you cope with this tension? And my second question on the fact you mentioned that taxes are really interesting indicators. Yeah, I'm a specialist of the French R&D tax credit, but it's pretty hard to observe when you have the structure of taxes, if there's tax credits and different tax credits, for example. And there's a lot of different tax credits in France. I'm not sure that you can observe everything, even within incubators. I'm not sure you understand everything, all the treatments done at the national level. I don't know. So it's how do you cope with this one?
I will start with the second one.
Okay.
Because in Estonian case it's easy. We don't have any tax credits for R&D. No, this is blank. But all companies have this reinvested profits are tax-free. But yeah, nothing special to R&D. And also regarding to the employment taxes, we just have real-time data for this. How much is paid taxes for each employee, and it's easy to monitor it. Of course, it doesn't work in some other countries where a lot of tax credits and different schemes, and you never know what is the real tax rate at the end of the year. But in our case, it works, I think. And to answer to your first question, yes, it's very hard for economists who needs a very good time series. It it's pain to if you have changed the targets and you have changed the definition during the period. That's why we are trying to avoid changing definitions, which this should be in place, but it's possible to change the targets if really all the conditions are changed during the period. But yeah, it's true, it's hard.
Thank you very much. I think we are really we did a really good job because we are on time and we are even a quarter left or something. So if there's no any more questions, I guess we can move to the coffee break. No, or yes, she okay. She will lead it. Okay, please. Thank you. Ça marche.
Je vous présenterai à l'occasion. Je pense que ce serait intéressant que vous échangiez,
Ouais.
vous travailliez un petit peu.
Ouais, bah, surtout qu'on est quand même à 50 mètres.
Ouais. ouais, j'ai vu votre bâtiment du coup.
Ah ouais, d'accord. Qu'est-ce que je veux dire? Bah oui, que je me souviens de la demoiselle, ce qu'elle fait dans la vie.
Moi, j'avais
Elle fait data scout. Scouts.
Est-ce que vous connaissez Pierre Monsan? Ça vous dit quelque chose?
D'accord. Faut que j'y aille. On rediscute après. Hi everybody. So please take your seat. We are carrying on because there's a shuttle afterwards, so we have to be on time. Okay, everybody. So please, and so now we are really specialized in blending in Champagne. It's a dash of Pinot Noir with a hint of Pinot Blanc and Pinot Meunier, some barrels. So now we carry on with blending experiences, and now we have Ingrid Willems, and she's at the head of Data Scouts, and she's an engineer, and she's also graduated in management, and so she's blending competencies to really monitor systems with data. So let's I give her the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a very nice start to be compared with a nice champagne. Let's get started. Indeed, I'll share with you a little bit what we're doing at Data Scouts, a startup company that started in 2016. In the meanwhile, we're 9 people, and we're all about scouting data. Is bringing data together, and make it accessible for organizations that really need to understand and monitor their market. If you look into the startup ecosystem, it's very funny. That's where we started in the beginning, because I was really looking for a proof of concept, wanted to show really what it means, that there's a lot of data out there, open data, publicly accessible data, but that it is very hard to get it all together and to really use it in a very consistent way. And, my idea was at the start that if I could map a startup ecosystem, I can map anything in the world. And that is where we started. But then again, if you want and try to start a startup ecosystem, it's not that easy. It's not just startups, and even there, many of these startups are not even companies at the moment they start. They're just projects. They're just individuals coming together. And then a startup ecosystem is not only about the startups. It's a lot about the people themselves getting together. It's a lot about, all the different actors in an ecosystem, the academia, the incubators, the accelerators, the investors. There's a lot of elements coming together. And that's what we learned in the process of starting to map ecosystems, and 3 years later, doing quite a little of them. Like we do the city of Antwerp, we do the city of Ghent, we do Lisbon, we do Espoo. So we have been building quite some experience in what it means to work on startups, with startups. And as well, to learn one thing that is very important, we are a technology company. We're a very geeky, data-driven organization, but we work with people. And it is also important to understand that, building an idea of what an ecosystem is through connection and collaboration with the people in the field. That's what we love, but that's really what makes things work, if people come together who care about a shared purpose. What does it mean for us to map an ecosystem? And I think here I come back to what Karel was saying before. There's a lot of data out there, and you can grasp it all together, you can pull it all together, and you get a very nice pile of data. But what do you do with it? It's all about what you want to measure. So that is quite important. So understanding your KPIs, understanding where your success factors are, is so important to bring the right data together. Nevertheless, we wouldn't be a startup if we wouldn't think lean and say, better done than perfect. Let's get started. Let's bring things together. The more insights we gather, the more concrete we can make the information we get out of it. So in general, if we do ecosystem mapping, what do? We start with mapping all the actors that play an active role in your ecosystem. And to sort of do a blueprint of who do you want to be? What is your ecosystem about? What do you know is specific? What are the elements you want to get to? Talking with a lot of organizations, their objectives are different. Some cities are just about marketing, nothing wrong about it, but it's making their startup city or their city very attractive, and startups is one part of it. Others are very much
much driven into the impact that they can generate. Others are very much focused on building that vibrant ecosystem, bringing for sure all these different departments of universities, incubators, accelerators, corporates together. So that is for us always very important when we start an exercise. Who do you want to be? Who are you? Because that's the only way for us to connect the dots. So once we get a first idea of who are the players in the ecosystem, we can start, if you want, monitoring the heartbeat of that ecosystem and seeing what is living in that ecosystem. I'll show you afterwards a couple of examples, but here we really try to capture information out of that network about what are they talking, what are the events that are going on, who is getting funding, who's getting awards for certain things. So you sort of get a feeling of what is happening in your ecosystem. And once you get that, you know, it's very nice to start comparing ecosystems, because in the end we're a network of ecosystem of ecosystems, nice platform economy strategies. But indeed, you know, it is then very interesting to see, you know, how are scale-ups compared to startups? How are, you know, a certain cluster of biotech compared to pure software startups? Because there you get a lot of insights about what it means to grow these businesses. We're talking about ecosystem, but all of them are very different. So we try to gather information and then try to understand really what are the hidden patterns that we find into it. Just to give you a bit of an idea how it looks like. Yeah, I'm looking at my screen while, you know, I have an assistant who is changing the slides behind me, so I hope we're in sync. I wanted to show you in live the tool, but it might be better if you are interested, you know, this afternoon, tomorrow, to go through certain things together, then you can better feel a little bit like how we've implemented for Antwerpen or for other cities. But what we mainly do is, as I said, we start making a list of everybody who is relevant in that ecosystem. For the city of Antwerpen, it's all the startups. Everybody who starts from having an idea to creating his own company, who really gets into an incubation program, acceleration program, who receives funding. All these kinds of stages, all these elements is what we're getting together. So we try to capture the information as early on as we can. And for doing that, we work closely together with the incubators and accelerators in the city. So we try to capture information as early on, and we try to monitor and follow as much as we can with publicly available data and with social media data what is happening in the city. We pool this information together in order to give insights and information how fast the ecosystem is growing, who is succeeding, which accelerators have which impact. If you look in the slide up there, we're looking into the connections. We strongly believe that you know, tapping into money and resources is for sure very important. Finding the right talent is very important. But we strongly believe as well that companies with a lot of connections, really leveraging what an ecosystem has to offer, has more opportunity to win. There's a lot of research done around the topic. You know, as a startup, we're quite pragmatic and straightforward, and we try to really, you know, gather as pragmatically as possible information about spin-offs, about, you know, the alumni of incubation programs, about who has been participating to awards like Deloitte Fast 50 or elements like that. Bringing this together on a timeline of a company learns us how fast they accelerate and what have been the levers for their growth. The other part, what you see here on the bottom, is sorry. Here on the bottom is more the social media behavior that we're capturing. So everybody in the ecosystem we're monitoring. We're really listening to what are they talking about, how are they engaging other people. So this gives us insights about who are the key influencers in the ecosystem, what are they talking about, and what is the time that we're talking about certain things. If you would see events, they have a peak. You know, at the moment that there is a certain event happening, it builds up, and then there is a huge peak, and then it falls down. Somebody who gets funding, sort of same kind of very peak behavior, and then it goes away. The elements that are really important for a group are coming back all the time. So here you see that if we're going to monitor a sort of a technology ecosystem, AI, VR, whatever it might be, you know, we see topics that come back for over a longer period. If we're really going into startup scenes in general, it's more peak behavior that we're looking into.
This is, for instance, an example that I wanted to share with you, as it is very specifically about how do we monitor, the impact that an incubator accelerator can have. This is an exercise we did. There is next week a huge and a very nice tech festival in Belgium. If you're in Belgium next week, please join us for Supernova, because you really need to be there. But what we did is we wanted to see, like, what's the difference in the growth curve of a startup compared to a scale-up. When do we see a scale-up or a startup growing into a scale-up? What are the indicators of that? Is that the 125K revenue? Is that the funding they raise? Is it the people that they are employing? And indeed, we see that FTEs is the best indicator for understanding the growth and the speed of growth of a company. Now, for these kind of analysis, we use, as I said, public data. In Belgium, we're very spoiled because there's a lot of open data. Every company has to deliver an annual financial report. So here we get all this information on how many employees they have and how many revenue they generate and so forth, and how many locations that they are active. And the funny thing is, these are all incubators, accelerators in Belgium. And what you see here is like EMAC completely on the left. They are hugely important for a lot of startups, but they're hugely important as well because the biggest amount of scale-ups in Belgium are going through EMAC. The nice thing that you see as well is that we have here at the end a couple of incubators that are really only early stage oriented. But there's no scale-ups coming out of these teams. So you need to really think a little bit about what's the impact there. Some of them are just early, so they're not yet there. Others, might have a focus that is not so much on, growing and really, creating scale-ups out of them, but more, circular economy, social entrepreneurship, sustainability, other kinds of projects that are not so much focused on creating companies in the end. And then the red ones you see, there are companies that really have a very high conversion ratio of going from a startup to a scale-up. This is the type of information we really bring together based upon a continuous and very systematic monitoring of all the actors in the ecosystem. So what are we mapping? What are we looking for? What are we analyzing? Are the actors, as I said, the companies, the people? And I call it communities because there's a lot of informal organizations that are very important for an ecosystem, but they are not established companies. But they might have a website, they might have a lot of events they organize, so that's what we're following up. We're focusing on technology. What we're doing is really working very well for technology companies or companies looking into digital transformation. It's not so easy for companies that don't have any digital assets because we use a lot of digital means to collect the data. And then we want to really look into market trends and understand what is happening there. So what does the tool do? In the end, if we have defined what we want to measure, we're going to bring a lot of data sources together. And that might be the Crunchbases of this world or any other data sources of startup information. That might be every information source that we can have around digital presence. That can be Alexa, that can be whatever we can get from Google and so forth. It's Twitter and all the social media that provide access to public information. So here, everything very important. We're very focused on being very GDPR compliant, so we're not going to espionage on data that is not publicly available, but we centralize all the information that's out there into one and the same place to build a live data feed and to bring that into interactive dashboards with whom you can interact. So no need to make Excels and pivot tables and everybody having his own version of the truth. It is one central database providing you information. Now, if we go into KPIs, because we have been looking a lot at how, and here again, perhaps this is as well a personal need as a startup, am I going fast enough? Am I growing fast enough? How are my competitors growing? How is the ecosystem growing as such? And we have built a KPI for that, a growth KPI that is based upon those 4 big elements. Behind it are like 36 different KPIs or metrics that we're capturing as we speak. So a lot about web presence and about findability on the web. We know that very small companies, if you're really into growth hacking and you want to validate your ID, the first thing you do is, put a landing page live. See if people react to it. Start playing a little bit with keywords to see if people buy these keywords or not. So very, very early stage, we're in a validation modus, we're experimenting. So as of that moment, we can grasp information about, is there traction for that startup that is going live? Same thing on social media performance. We know that companies that want to be found, they produce a lot of content, they want to share the information, they want to share about how they're doing as a startup. So using Twitter, using Instagram, putting elements on LinkedIn are very common among startups in order to share who you are and to generate followers. So that is the information that we're capturing. Then it's about traction, because you can communicate to the outer world a lot what you do, but at the same time you make, especially if you're a digital business, your conversion online. So having information about the number of users coming to your web page, having information about the bounce rate, the speed of your website, eventually the different technologies behind it that you're using, all that information is publicly available. We capture it because it provides us a lot of insights about the maturity of the company. And then the last element, and that's especially important when we go and look to scale-ups and growing companies, is more about, you know, the pure business metrics. You know, how many FTEs, how many people are working for this company. And here we differentiate between what we find in public, informal databases, like the National Bank of Belgium providing us this information for Belgian startups. But we look as well in what LinkedIn says. And we know that there is a difference that is quite important. I mean, you know, between the formal information, how many FTEs you have in your payroll, and the people involved in your company on LinkedIn, it's 1 to 3. So in general, there's 3 to 4 times more people on LinkedIn than is on the books itself. We look in how many locations are you active, how many offices do you have, because that gives an idea about the European expansion or even the global expansion where a company is focusing on. And then, you know, what we can find on financial information, we'll work with it, but here in many cases publicly not available. We rather go to working together with program owners who have the information, or working together with paid data sources in general. And then we do a bit of magic around it, trying to understand what's the growth dashboard of your landscape. So what you see here is in the middle is the mean. This is all, I think this is the scale-up dashboard for Belgium. These are all the scale-ups in Belgium that we're monitoring for over 12 months now. The mean is in the middle. The startups or the scale-ups that are on the right side are bigger than the mean. They have a higher growth rate in general over those 12 months than others have been having. On the left side, they're smaller. The ones on top are growing faster this month than the mean, and the ones on the bottom are not growing as fast. So what it means is that right top, you know, here we have our what we call the front runners, companies that are larger than average and growing faster than average. So these are the ones that are really, you know, at a very nice growth pace. The ones, just to take the laggards, are the ones that are smaller than average today and they're not growing. They're growing, you know, they're really lagging behind, or they're even so small that they're not yet having sufficient growth pace. But having this monitor month after month after month gives a quite interesting information on how the landscape is evolving. I'm not going to say that it is methodology 100% right, KPIs taking everything into account, but it gives a very, very strong indication on how the startups, the scale-ups are growing in an ecosystem. We work with portfolios, so you can really, you know, look at portfolios and benchmark portfolios as you want to really understand what is happening in that ecosystem. Then last couple of words. Oh, one back? Yeah, no worries. There is one further. One further? Oh, I don't know. Doesn't matter. You know, as I said, we work a lot with structured data, bringing the data together from multiple databases. But at the same time as well, we work a lot with unstructured data. So what we get out of news articles, out of social media, in order to capture the connections, in order to capture the main events that companies are having. And the platform is built in a way as well that we can crowdsource information, so you can use it, you know, purely as your own analytic environment, but at the same time as well in many and most of our startup ecosystems, we use it as well as a community tool to invite the scale-ups or the projects to contribute to it and to build their own information in it. So here again, depends very much on how you want to use and what you want to do to it. In order to really make the best practice out of it. But if we bring it all together, what we aim to do is to develop or to provide an automated workflow to capture data. Because if you want to have a good monitoring system, if you want to have good KPIs, if you want to do big data, whatever it is, if you don't have good data, you know, you get
nothing out of it. You know, these KPIs don't work. And that's where we really want to work on, is make sure that you get that live data stream, that you get a good stream of data that is important to do a systematic profiling and to provide a continuous competitive ranking. So in general, as we talk about ecosystems, although we talk a lot about competitive intelligence as well, we strongly believe that building startups, creating, you know, really the change that we really are looking for, especially in Europe, if we don't want to lose the battle completely from Asia and from the US, is making sure that we really use the collaborative power that we have. We work very much together with, as I said, cities. We work together with country associations that do startups. We work together with the European Startup Nation as well to make sure that we capture the information and can work on a complete data set. So we invite everybody to share experience. We do that ourselves as well, participate to round tables and, you know, share our own experience. We love to be getting involved, you know, and involve others in academic tracks around, you know, everything that has to do with ecosystem vibrancy and building creative ecosystems for having impact. But it all starts with just, you know, doing the job very pragmatically, is mapping your ecosystem, getting the data, looking into it, connecting the dots, and you know, discovering trends and tendency as early on as possible. I think that is mainly it that I wanted to share with you. Yeah, that was what I was talking about. This gives you a very big overview, I mean high level, I would say, about who our customers are. As I said, we started from the business support and the startup ecosystem, so we have quite a lot of very interesting and nice customers with whom we work on understanding what is happening in their ecosystem. On the left side, we are, you know, moving much more into the corporate side. On one side, these are corporate VCs that are interested to exactly understand as well what is happening in their space and how their startups are comparing and growing compared to other ones. But we have as well more and more startup scale-ups who use the tool to monitor their own progress. I think one thing that I need to say, what is very important, we're not a data provider, we're a platform. So the data is owned by our customer. So we're not, you know, capturing data to sell it again. That's not our job. So we always start from scratch. So it takes a bit of time before you have your monitoring ready, up and running. But I think that is as well our strength. There's sufficient startup directories out there that you can find and that you can buy data. I think what is so important in the jobs that you guys are doing is that you own and you know, have ownership about your own data. And that's what is really important to us. Then we're checking and working with some business consultants because they have that same question in many cases, that the data preparation and the gathering of data is taking them a lot of time. So on the data gathering side, we work a lot with them to help them to grow their, you know, or to automate, I would say, their data processing part. Well, that is what I wanted to share a little bit with you. I hope it was not a commercial, you know, pitching my product. I just wanted to give you some insights on, you know, how we have evolved from a first basic map of Antwerp to a very interesting system that now continuously every hour again tells you, you know, what are the trending topics, who are the main influencers, who got funding, what are the events that are really, you know, buzzing in the ecosystem. If you want to see it work, I'm here, more than happy to share it with you. My colleague of Antwerp, Veronique, is there as well. You know, it might be interesting as well to hear from her, you know, how, you know, she looks as a user into these kind of solutions. Thank you. Any questions?
Questions?
So I understand a private company, your company owns the platform, right?
Yes, it's true. Yeah.
So, but to do this work with the ecosystem in this city, who finance? I mean, who? The city, the region, or you do it just on your own?
No, that's a good question. I mean, it depends very much from you know, situation to situation. Like in the city of Antwerp, it is the city of Antwerp itself who finances it. If I look into the Vaud region in Switzerland, there's a couple of organizations that put themselves together, and you know, that's really a collaborative approach. So here I had to learn, and that was my, you know, business model innovation, I would say, is that we don't
have in many cases only one customers. We work with an ecosystem, so we have multiple parties together, and yeah, then you create a sort of a consortium of a group of people who are then the owners of the data that is generated and the insights.
So the platform can be transferred to any region, to any city.
Yes. Yes. Yes, yeah, we have been thinking global right from the beginning. I mean, Belgium is a very, very, very small country, although there's a lot of ecosystem thinking happening, but it's too small. And so we thought right from the beginning that, we need to be able to integrate as much as different data sets as are out there.
So it's modular, like
yeah.
You just can adapt it to the given situation with different models?
Yeah, so and that's why in the beginning I said, or I tried to explain that, each ecosystem is different, each purpose is different. So yeah, starting from building the taxonomy, if you want, of that ecosystem is a starting point, because you cannot compare a health tech ecosystem with, an ecosystem on cybersecurity, for instance. Completely different elements that we are tracking and looking for. Some elements stay the same, but if you really want to get out of the unstructured data real insights, you need to put a structure in place again.
Any other questions? Yes, please.
Hello.
One question that comes to my mind perpetually once I listen to your really outstanding presentation about outstanding achievement. The presentation
Thank you.
is also cool, but the achievements are really outstanding. What are the main obstacles that startups indicate not to show up in the base? Like saying that, for example, on the top of my head, we are so afraid that our precious invention will be stolen by the public. But are there any other? How you internally as a team, how you try to mitigate those fears?
Yeah. Well, I noticed it's a hard question. Depends as well a little bit from situation to situation. Of course, if you want, in that sense, we're a B2B2C platform. We're not having the direct contact with, the end user, or we don't communicate. So it's very many times it's the city or it is, the program that does the communication. We facilitate it and we share the knowledge. In general, what we notice is that people are very interested to understand where we get the data from. They want to understand, like, which public sources do we use and where does that data get from. So when it is wrong, that they can update it. Because what they notice by what we do is there's a lot of information about their startup out there. It's a very transparent world in which we live today, that they need to make sure that they take action to be sure that the data is corrected. In many cases, we put it on F6S very early on when we want to do open call management. We put startup information on Crunchbase, on Dealroom, on whatever it is, and nobody updates it again, And so by pulling it all together and being transparent where it comes from, it gives them the opportunity as well to correct it. So in general, they appreciate it, I would say. Yeah, it's good. Thank you.
Any other question? I have two questions. Yeah. One is on the types of links. I mean, I guess you say it's a transparent world, but when you communicate on social media, you can manipulate. You can so there's biases, and also there's some maybe links that are harder to get, financial links, for example. Yeah. And so, how do you cope with it? How do you weight the different links between the nodes in your network analysis? This is the first question. And the second question is about the endogeneity of your rankings. I mean, when you publish that this startup is the lead runner, it's successful, but it's successful because you say so. I mean, because you say it's the first one, so everybody will put money, and the city will put money, and so on. So there's a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy going here thanks to your activities. So how do you manage it?
Let me start with the first question. The first question is, of course, the one where we spend the most of our engineering time on, is the truth finding problem, solving it. So as we use a lot of databases, we're going never to take like one input as the right one. So we're always going to verify that information on multiple sources. And then you have two things. It might be that the source that provides you the information is visionary and knows something that the others don't know yet. That's one option. So then the only one that has the information that is different from the other ones is the right one. But in most cases, it's the other way around. You know, that the more sources have the same information, it is right. But it indeed, I mean, take funding information. You know, especially when we talk about euros and dollars and which series and rounds, there is so much information out there. So yeah, here it's really artificial intelligence, data science behind it, in which we're really comparing as many of these things. What we do as well, if we don't know, we ask. So in general, we have a sort of a human in the loop and a feedback capability that if we're not sure that we have the right information, we're going to ask it to people that have a high trust score that they know about this. And that is continuously evolving. So the more information we get, the more feedback we get, the better the system gets in understanding whom to ask for what. But that's how we tackle that one. And then secondly, is it a self-fulfilling prophecy? I need to say, if I look for myself, every month again, when I look the numbers, and this is of course, you know, a personal thing, I'm really interested to see how fast we went compared to the other ones. You know, it gives me an indication, did we make a jump forward or not? Like July was a very bad month. In Belgium, everybody was on holiday. So, you know, we felt all of a sudden things pulling back. But in August, we were there again, and September was, so it gives me, for the first time, a little bit of an insight in how fast as a company we're moving. And then the second thing is that the rating depends on an ecosystem per ecosystem. So it is really relative to the other actors in your ecosystem, because it's growing to predict the growth of the companies, the speed of growth compared to, you know, other growth models. So if you would take our score in the Antwerp database, in the Belgian database, in the European database, or in our very specific database of competitors, you would see different scores, and then there is more like, you know, the difficulty of explaining how can I have 5 different scores, you know, but as it is really linked to whom you are comparing, you know, you're running a race compared to others, I would say you get information on that one. But indeed, I think what we try to do here is give insights on, you know, not so much the individual, because this kind of, these dashboards are never going public. You know, so these are really used on the inside so that you can use it for impact analysis. Up to today, we've never been publishing them outside.
Thank you very much. So I guess we had a nice session, and thank you everybody for your participation. And now we move on to the next activities, and we have a shuttle to take, and so there will be another host, so I won't be with you this afternoon, but I wish you really a pleasant stay in Champagne. Thank you.